national anthem, and thereafter UI anthem. Of the greatest words, of the greatest words, of the greatest words, greatest of the greatest of the greatest words, greatest Baba, greatest Bogo, greatest Bibi, greatest please take your seats. Pàtẹ́wọ́ fún UI. Ẹni tí ò bá tí ìwà ìlú ẹ̀ kò tí ì lọ yunifásitì. Abirani. On behalf of the President, University of Ibadan Senior Staff Club Worldwide, Dr. Femi Oyamaki, and members of his executive committee, I warmly welcome you to the July edition of the University of Ibadan Senior Staff Club Discourse, titled of Empires and Imperial Majesties in Yoruba Land, some historical perspectives. Our members will recall that during the first coronation on the 44th Olubadan of Ibadan land, His Imperial Majesty Oba Rashidi Adewolu Ladoja, on September 23 last year, we had the first coronation lecture where Professor Falola asserted, and rather forcefully, that Ibadan land had an empire. But the trend we have seen today is that many of us are now addressing themselves with the honorific title of His Imperial or their Imperial Majesties. So we now decided at this club that we must interrogate this trend intellectually, and that is the essence of this July discourse. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are led to this discourse by distinguished Nigerian public intellectual, outstanding administrator, former resident electoral commissioner, Niger and Taraba State. And if you are asking about the annual June 12, 1993 election, please ask the chairman of today's discourse. Distinguished ladies, he has the result to I recognize and present to this assembly, especially former President General of the Central Council of Ibadan Indigenes, very distinguished Are Mayegun of Ibadan, Chief Mustapha Adebayo Oyero. bá a mú wọn jókòó àbúrò mi. Ṣé ẹ yà jọ wà bẹ́ẹ̀ ní ṣe mo bá ṣe dàgbà ní ẹni mò ń kọjá yìí mi àbúrò mi eléyìí.
Èèmọ̀ rẹ́jísírà yunifásitì wọn á lọ gbé orí wọn á lọ gbé fáìlì ṣé tó bá lọ ju Ajíbóyè lọ á lọ gbé fáìlì ó yẹ kó ti fò mí.
Tí àwọn bandits bá tètè réèpù ni màá bírù rẹ̀. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is another distinguished Nigerian. In April 2024, this dedicated researcher, wonderful scholar, a historian at this university, won the Global Professorship Award, totaling about 1.8 billion naira. The project is titled The project is titled The Tan and Gan Interface, Ibadan and Decolonization of Social Knowledge in the 21st Century. I present to you specially Professor Olutayo Adesina, our guest speaker. My leadership. Interestingly, during that first coronation lecture, one of the members of that committee is also one of our discussants this evening. We met several times in our office where we had a successful outing. A scholar of history from Obafemi Awolowo University, now Dean of Fast, Emmanuel Alayande University, Oyo. Especially our fourth discussant, Professor Akin Alao. Okay, thank you. I also recognize especially my own brother, a prominent Nigerian polymath. He is a consulting engineer, research scientist, linguist, and cultural activist with a significant social media profile. He makes global scholarly declaration on Yoruba as a culture and intellectual, drawing on intellectual resources from the Yoruba past. He agrees for the continent relevance in the present knowledge age and project that even greater potentials in a global future characterized by artificial intelligence. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, through the chairman, I present to you very distinguished Dr. Tunde Adibola, the second discussant. Let me also recognize and invite to the high table our president, UI Senior Star Club Worldwide, Dr. Femi Oyamaki, a statistician. A man that when he sits down, he stands tall. Mr. Chairman, sir, from Osun State Judicial Division, I recognize my Lord Honorable Justice Abdulwasi Akanbi, retired. As a published weekend torrent pages, he has not picked up his own copy today. You are most welcome, sir. Mr. Chairman, sir. Okay. I also recognize one of our living legends, one of our living ancestors, former dean of the programming school, now programming college, former member of the governing council of our university, very distinguished Professor Bode Lucas. Let me also draw the attention of this wonderful assembly to the fact that our chairman at this discourse today is a member of UI class of 67. Yes, I'm former member of the governing council of our university. Another round of applause. Thank you for reminding me, Aguru. Thank you. Mr. President, sir, please welcome us.
Check the next item. Roy, please put this guy. The next item is here.
Oh God. Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Mr. Chairman, sir.
On this note, I hereby hand over to the chairman of this.
Okay.
Is everything out?
With that amendment from my bro, I hereby hand over the microphone to the chairman of this. Pàtẹ́wọ́ fún mi, àbúrò mi.
If that makes him happy.
That's the thing, sir.
Accept.
It's granted, sir.
Mr. President, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm not a member of this club, but I personally designate myself as an associate member of YORUBA. So thank you very much for this. It's a great honor and I appreciate it. Professor Tayo Adeshina, actually in this hall today, I think without anybody telling me, I should feel at home. Yes. On this table, Aki has been very, very, let me call him my boy. Shebu is my boy. He's also my boy. Tayo is my boy. This is my friend. And Bode, we've been together for decades. And let me take this opportunity to thank him for what he might have forgotten. I was a member of the governing council. The council decided the university must have the business school, and I was the member of the committee set up to establish the school. But before we finished, our term ended as a council, so I didn't attend their meeting again. So he invited me. He asked me, we are expecting you at the meeting. I said, no, I can't come to the meeting. I was appointed because I was a member of the governing council. The term has expired, so I'm no longer a member. But he wrote a letter. He said I should attend in my own capacity. I said, no. If you are to do that, you as the chairman write to me so that it is formal. And it did. So I was a member of that. was excited when I read the invitation and the theme of the discussion this evening, because to some extent, this use of imperial, I was a part of it. So with the topic itself, I can say that I feel happy. Historians have told us the genesis of the Yoruba race. They told us Yoruba is our progenitor. They told us Yoruba ọmọ kan ló bí, ó sì jẹ́ Ọ̀kànbí. Ọ̀kànbí had 7 sons. Each of them founded not an empire, kingdoms. The 7 of them. Oníkókó ọ̀kókó, onísàbẹ̀ ọ̀sàbẹ̀, ọ̀rọ̀gbọ́ fìlà. You all know this idea. So later, Oromia founded an empire. Later, the empire collapsed. On the ashes of that empire, the empire emerged. The question I want to ask Dr. Adeshina to this evening is, because I've read a lot of the history of Ibadan. Kí ló motivate Ibadan láti máa lọ jagun, láti máa lọ kára lókù lẹ́yìn? If we are kids and kings, at what point did Ibadan decide that he should be lording it over other kingdoms? And don't forget, Ibadan was not a kingdom. It was not founded by any of the 7 sons. They said the chief in Ife decided to live in Ife, came down south, got to the place between the forest and the savannah, and then established. But at that time, I want everybody to know, because I gave a lecture in 2024, and I had to and to my surprise, many Ibadans don't know that we are in the 3rd Ibadan. This was not the Ibadan that Lagelu established. The first 2 occasions, Ibadan was depopulated. The combined forces of Yoruba land sacked the city. So the present one is the 3rd attempt to establish Ibadan. And this now happened when Oyo Empire collapsed. And probably I'm getting the answer myself. Because everybody virtually from Yoruba land started migrating to Ibadan, which historians also told us was a Loda town. Those who participated in Oyo Empire military hegemony now started coming to Ibadan. So the present Ibadan was essentially established by those people. Imagine that, look, these are warriors from where they were coming from. And that is why almost every major unit of Yoruba land is represented in Ibadan. The current Ibadan, this third Ibadan, started with leaders like the Jebus, the Egas, the Gominas, the Ifes. In fact, Professor Adesina may know more than I do, but the history of Ibadan I read is that the first Baale of Ibadan was an Ife man. And as of today, out of the 44 Ibadan that we have now, at least Ogbomoso must have produced minimum of 4 or 5. Yes. That is why to get pé àwọn aládé máa tẹ ìdókòó mọ́ṣọ̀. Èyí náà tó ń tiwa. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I hand over to the keynote speaker, this idea of empire in Oyo State, Imperial Majesty, has historical, political undertone. When I was President General of Central Council of Ibadan Indigenes, it was then that CCI first applied the title of Imperial Majesty to the Ibadan. CCI, under my leadership, first applied that title to the Ibadan. But later, the state governments tried to reorganize the chieftaincy arrangement in Ibadan. So the administration of Ajimobi then came up with the Royal Majesty. The Royal Highness, Royal Majesty, and Imperial Majesty. The Royal Majesty, for those, we call them Part 2 chieftains. A Part 2 chief in Oyo State is entitled to wear a beaded crown. So he applied this to what we used to call villages, our baales. But when you look at it, the village, those places we used to call villages, many of them are now even larger, bigger than many towns. So they were upgraded from minor chieftaincy, which is Part 3, to Part 2, which is crown, beaded crown wearing obas. So he gave them Royal Majesty. Who are the next level? No, that's the third. Those, that first rung is Royal Highness. The next one is Royal Majesty. Who are the Royal Majesties? You know, the system in Ibadan is you start from the first step, you go through 22 steps on the right side, Koto side, and 23 on Balogun side. But by the time you get to Ekaru Ibadan, Ekaru Balogun, you become High Chief. Ẹ̀kẹrin Olúbàdàn, ẹ̀kẹrin Balógun, upward, they are the kingmakers in Ibadan. But all of them, from Ekaru to Balogun on one side, they are 6. On the other side, they are 5. All the 11, from 1997, when traditional councils were created, Ibadan had 11 local governments. So these high chiefs became acting chairman of the traditional councils, the 11 in Ibadan, headed by high chiefs. When the administration set up the judicial panel to review the chieftaincy arrangement, the group of high chiefs submitted a memorandum to that panel requesting that they should be given crown. I think you are following me.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So they demanded a crown. Why? Because in the left city, we have 6 local governments. A high chief was the chairman of that traditional council. But the baroness we pick, who are now Your Royal Highness, they are chiefs appointed by Olubadan Council, where these high chiefs were members. So they were the ones who appointed the baroness, who will now be given crowns. So how would, for the high chiefs not to look inferior to the baroness, who are now bearing crowns, government approved that they should also be wearing crowns. Now to distinguish between them, it is then we now have, for the baroness, Royal Highness. For the high chiefs, Royal Majesty. And for the Olubadan, Imperial Majesty. Now, what do you do? Aláàfin had an empire. Aláàfin, Olubadan, Asọ̀rún, they are paramount rulers. So they now said, okay, the 3 of them should be Imperial Majesty. So Ogbomoso didn't have an empire. But if you give the other 2 Imperial Majesty, what do you give to the 3rd paramount ruler? That was how Ṣọ̀ún also became Imperial. There's another thing that is now more common, more rampant in Yoruba land and that is Kineka land, Ibadan land, Omoto land, Igbo land, Erumo land. Everybody is now land. But for me, and apart from that, it doesn't hurt. You want to be recognized as a clinical land. So, as long as it doesn't interfere with the right of another community, for me, so be it. So, with this preliminaries, I think I can now call on the keynote speaker. Correct wherever you think have been wrong. And I won't feel ashamed. I'm not an historian. I read economics here, not even economic issue. So I want to invite Professor Tara.
I think the first thing I have to correct is that people think I am from Ikwetumodu, but now it is Ikwetumodu land. Distinguished Chairman, Chief Bayo, distinguished members of the High Table, and here this evening, I recognize other distinguished members of the club, the chairman. But most importantly, I must recognize Professor Femi Omosin. God moves in miraculous ways, this wonders to perform. It was He who sent me to UI. It's a long story, but I'll be happy to tell it one day. Good evening, all. I am happy to be here. It is actually very wonderful to talk about His Imperial Majesty. And let me also thank Professor Ajiboye for also inviting me for this very wonderful occasion. Of empires and their imperial majesties in Yoruba land, and some historical perspectives. That's a very wonderful topic. Do you become an imperial majesty without having an empire? Unless my English is wrong. Then, of course, all things bright and beautiful, when they come to Nigeria, they have different shapes. So, in that light, since everybody is now His Imperial Majesty, I am also declaring the Akwetumodu of Ikwetumodu His Imperial Majesty. Well, Bagaland is also claiming the same. On Sunday, October 13, 2024, the Oluwo of Igbo, Oba Abdulrasheed Akabi, Telu 1, issued a directive. For me, it wasn't even a directive, it was a proclamation via a signed statement posted on his Facebook. stating that he was to be addressed as His Imperial Majesty rather than His Royal Majesty. That drew my attention to something to say, well, this thing is becoming a pandemic. It's not only diseases that can be called pandemics. Ideas can become pandemic. And so, he said this was not unconnected to the respect his two commands as the direct blood of Oduduwa, the natural paramount crown from Iwo's formation, and several other things. This matter left his big book and appeared in the Punch newspaper of October 14. Declaration was made on October 13, but October 14, it had drawn the attention of the Punch newspaper. Fair enough, this issue should be seen as a natural progression of history, because history is not static. Societies are not static. And so, the Iwo case is interesting for several reasons, which I will show presently. This presentation sits squarely within the call for all of us as Africans to study and understand history extensively. And the chairman has demonstrated that extensively this evening. Please a round of applause for the This will be one clear trajectory towards a more robust understanding of the present and the future. Because people always assume that as historians our head is stuck in the past, but that's not true. Whatever we do or whatever we say is always an eye for the future. And it is also not all about the rise and fall of empires or the death of one king after another. History is beyond that. And for me, history is the totality of human experience. You understand society, the more you understand history. And so, in an age when we consider issues with minimal scrutiny, history encompasses knowledge, information, and the interpretations that drive human progress. But that is not all. It is also the harbinger of both order and disorder. So, depending on what you want to use history for. In fact, people don't know, but history is one of the greatest tools for disorder. Depends on how you want to use it. And so, significantly, we are also witnessing a lot of that at present. In the contemporary period, Nigerians have been assailed by a staccato of information and seemingly well-positioned historical analysis, much of which has further entrenched disequilibrium in the polity. So if we are not careful and we don't recalibrate how history is disseminated, we are going to go into bigger problems. These developments have brought the uses and abuses of history into bold relief. This discourse and the issue under consideration today may raise ethical concerns because of its ramifications. That said, we are also aware that societies evolve in different directions, and since human society is not static, this gives room for diverse changes that may diverge significantly from past practices. So, history is actually not stuck in some kind of reverse chair. We also move forward. We should therefore not see the traditional institution as something stuck in the past, simply because we regard it as the custodian of past practices. It has also evolved over time. Nevertheless, discussing the stools and their occupants can be very problematic when viewed from both traditional and modernist perspectives. This presentation is thus neither an attempt to turn the platform into a court of public opinion. So whatever we say is actually not trying to make this platform into a court of public opinion to say he has said to it must be true, we have evidence. It's not what we are trying to do. Now, is history coming to judgment? Because we read people saying history will judge. History doesn't judge. It doesn't. It's people who judge. History will state the facts, then come to your conclusions. It is simply a dialogue between the past and the present. That's what we are doing. It's a dialogue. Draw your conclusions. And that is why at times when we see what the PG school is trying to, PG college is trying to do, they tell you, what's your recommendation? That's not the way of history. In fact, 1 year the PG college was not going to graduate my students because they said, number one, oral information should not be primary sources. They can only be secondary sources. Those who taught me history said oral information is primary, especially coming from the Ibadan School of History. So the PG provost told me, your students are not going to graduate. I said, are we at that sorry pass now? I said, well, okay. Stay there, I will stay in my day. But at the end of the day, sanity prevailed, and my students were allowed to graduate. So I've said it's a dialogue between the past and the present. Every day we wait to hear one story or another about our traditional royal institutions or the people who occupy the stools. Some are heartwarming, others less so. We have also been assailed by the cacophony of those who think the stools and their occupants have become not only burdensome, but also severely anachronistic. Yet, we see and hear those who continue to reaffirm the relevance and the beauty of the traditional institution. What side of the spectrum are you? This is a very valid question because there are those who are here to listen to how I am going to take the institution to the cleaners. Yet others are looking forward to the validation of the royal stools as enigmatic and relevant. Let us wait and see what historical evidence we will adduce to understand what our rulers have made of the stools they occupy and how. This becomes even more significant when you consider the stools as models designed for the past, when we now have a generation already living in the future. That's a contradiction. Our traditional rulers are supposed to be the custodian of the past, who are now presiding over a generation that is already in the future. How do you harmonize? How do you get over this contradiction? I exhort you to kindly listen with an open mind. So don't close your mind to it. So let us look at Yoruba land and Yoruba thrones in context. Who is imperial enough? Because in one state in the southwest, the traditional rulers came together in a meeting, and the very senior ones who had been around since the pre-colonial times began to award. It became an award. You and you can be imperial. You and you are His Royal Majesty. It happened. It was a life thing. So it became an award. And we've seen all this because Yoruba land is a land of 1,000 kings. Or, as the eminent historian Professor A.I. Ashwani once described it, quote and unquote, a federal republic of 1,000 kings. So you have all sorts. Yoruba monarchs of the past sit on the thrones of their forefathers and were addressed by the throne-specific titles linked to their ancestral thrones through the universal title of Oba. We grew up knowing the Ooni of Ife. We didn't know him as his Imperial Majesty. But suddenly one day things changed. But even if you ask me, the Ooni of Ife should not be contending with other Obas to bear the title his Imperial Majesty. If you ask me, I will say he is His Eminence because his title is both traditional and religious. So those who use his eminence are not better than him. But today, he and others fight over the Imperial Majesty title. So we grew up knowing the Ooni of Ife, Owa Obokun of Ijesha land. Or even if you ask people, they say, no, it's not Ijesha land, it's Owa Obokun of Ijesha. Aláàfin of Ọ̀yọ́, Aláké of Abẹ́òkúta. But now it's now Aláké of Ẹ̀gbá land. But there are those who will contend that there is no Ẹ̀gbá land, he is Aláké of Abẹ́òkúta. So you could see these transitions, and somebody has described transition as a transition to a transition to a transition and transition, and transitions never end, which is where we have now found ourselves. It's a transition. And so, we knew Oshimawe of Ondo, and we knew Oluwo of Ondo. And I must not forget to add the Akotumudu of Akotumudu. The Oluwa of Ibadan will come later. Yes, because relatively to the Akotumudu crown, Ibadan crown is a baby. But is it because Akotumudu is an ancient town, then Kabiyesi must be His Imperial Majesty? You will see the argument, advanced by somebody to say, no, because it is an ancient crown, automatically I am imperial. No, it's not the way it's calibrated. There are other issues that we must consider. So we are all familiar with titles such as His Highness, His Royal Highness, His Majesty. The newly touted addition to the mix now is His Imperial Majesty, to distinguish particular kings from others. And it is now appears to be the most coveted one for now. And I'm saying for now because Yorubas will tell you we don't know what will happen tomorrow. So they are coming. And that's why I spoke about the transition to transition to transitions. But the question now is, in Yoruba land, which of our traditional rulers qualify to be addressed as His Imperial Majesty, or His Majesty, or His Royal Highness? The chairman has given us an indication of how the Ibadan one came to be. And so these royal titles must rely on historical and geopolitical qualifications. There is no way you can remove the historical and geopolitical from who has to be what. And simply because, some social formations have become larger than the traditional ones we used to know, then they become more important than those with a long history behind them. Conventions states that a king qualifies to be addressed as imperial if a king had existed or he held sway beyond his traditional domain. Beyond his traditional domain. One argument that one of us is canvassing now is, yes, I crown 30 kings. I am a consenting authority. And so I am qualified to be His Imperial Majesty. That's not it. That's not it. So in a conventional definition, we don't think that should extend to the qualification to be addressed as imperial majesty. That empire, and I'm talking about the empire that qualifies somebody to be his imperial majesty, that empire must have comprised several distinct kingdoms or vast territories. You don't just capture one small village near you and then you become the lord of the land. No, that's not what we're talking about. So if we could feel the powers and influence of Oyo Empire from Oyo land to Benin Republic, to Togo, to Ghana. So, what then qualifies you to be in the same camp with the Alaafin? These are things we must consider when we give these honorific titles out to people. Their claim to the title of majesty may not be up for criticism, but once the prefix imperial is added, that is when we have to take note and pay heed to factors qualifying an order to be addressed as its imperial majesty. These kings are independent and were recognized as the rulers of their domains. Yet, they were and still are interdependent, as most trace their origins to the same eponymous ancestors. They also tended to defer to those they considered more powerful in cultural terms. Some have demurred in this regard. Nevertheless, Akinjogbe advanced his theory of the epic commonwealth as a factor uniting these two. The concept of the epic commonwealth is the socio-political theory advanced and popularized by this professor of history in Ife as an extended family with Ile-Ife as the ancestral throne. Even so, this has been contested by some others because some Yoruba communities have now said, no, we didn't come from Ife, it came from somewhere else. So you get different understandings of how things came to be, and revisionism is a very important part of historical science. So you have revisionist histories all over the place, and you begin to wonder as a historian, so which one is which one now? And so they are confusing our children. Nollywood is confusing our children. I watched a play at the Theatre Arts one day in which historically what ended in tragedy ended in the Theatre Arts here on a positive note. Yeah. And I said, look, you are confusing our children because they will read one thing in the book, and at the end of the day, you act a play that didn't end in tragedy. There are issues. We must know where we are going as a society. And so, the argument of difference can sometimes be nebulous or used to justify independence. Even then, there was a hierarchy in the designation of these rulers. Even before the modern states began to classify some as first-class obas and so on, there have been issues surrounding the practices of our traditional rulers in the past. In fact, it became a common theme in nationalist criticisms of the indirect rule system that the Oba in Yoruba land had attained a position of power and influence far in excess of their pre-colonial positions. So, this thing that we are witnessing now began with the colonial administration. they made them much more important than they were in traditional society. Okay, so we have seen Obas also define the Ebi Commonwealth. Many Obas were respected for being at the foundation phase of Yoruba society. Even then, there were frictions. Kunmi, the powerful 19th century ruler of Ijayi, looked the Alaafin Atiba in the eye over the former speech of Yoruba tradition. Atiba had wanted his son Adeluyi to succeed to the throne after his demise, but Kunmi disagreed. You know, so it's not as if they don't disagree. It's not as if there were not certain structures that were actually contested. So, the issue of His Imperial Majesty came up during the Council of Obas meeting somewhere. I don't want to mention the state. The first-class Obas argued that those traditional rulers with the title of Imperial Majesties were those with pre-colonial and colonial experiences. That's their categorization. While those with post-colonial experiences, that is, those who were made Obas, elevated by post-colonial governments, must bear the title His Royal Highness. Non-negotiable. That's their own classification. Though this argument appears plausible, but then political interference in chieftaincy matters dictates how a chief or an Oba is graded, and we have now seen the matter of Ogbomoso as classified by the Oyo State government to say, as from today, you are imperial. That's not the way it's done. But let me also quickly say, because I'm looking at the people giving me paper of 5 minutes, that the Constitution and the right to freedom of expression also covers these traditional rulers and their institutions. If the traditional ruler thinks he wants to be imperial, there's nothing that stops him from being imperial. If you think your right has been abridged in a particular way, go to court. Go to court. And so, we have now seen the history of creating imperial frontiers. A few pre-colonial states and kingdoms established imperial frontiers that brought several territories under their control. And that is why we were able to describe them as imperial majesties. Some built military stockades, developed administrative structures, and took over the land. You must take over the land if you are going to be described as imperial. You must create imperial forces and structures. You must have firmly established yourself in the territories, many of which have remained populated by people from the imperial states till today. So you could see the categorization. You cannot just wake up one day and say, because I have 1 or 2 domains under me, then it's so. In the case of Benin, we could see that Benin had 2,001 towns and villages under her control. So yeah, qualifies to be called imperial. And then of course there is no question about the Oyo Empire with its vast provinces and territories. There is no question about that. Was Ibadan an imperial state? On its royal website, the 44th Olubadan Oba Rashidi Adewodu Lajeda is referenced as the Imperial Majesty Oba Rashidi Adewodu Lajeda. But we all knew that Ibadan was a de facto imperial state. It was a de facto imperial state. It emerged as a powerful state after the fall of the empire, of the empire. The social and political evolution of Ibadan is one of the greatest developments in Yoruba history. Ibadan State not only designed a political structure that exercised imperial ambitions, and that's what the chairman was talking about. We must display imperial ambitions of wanting to take over territories, of wanting to garrison territories, of wanting to control other crown heads, and Ibadan was that. Ibadan had several kingdoms under his control, even though it was under the control of Ibadan itself. And this came under the viceroys known as the Bakekere, who reported back to the rulers of Ibadan under the Bale and Balogun. So the transformation of the Bale into an Oba and the fact of its large territorial control qualifies Ibadan for the title of his imperial majesty. Iwo, in chapter 7 of Akinjope's War and Peace in Yoruba Land, the author of that chapter, titled Iwo, the case study of a non-belligerent Yoruba state, in the 19th century, clearly made a distinction between Ibadan and Iwo. He stated entirely, the extent and frequency of the involvement of different Yoruba states and kingdoms in the 19th century was varied. Ibadan was the archetype of a belligerent state and was in a different class of its own. And the German said so. What did Ibadan eat? And something in his stomach was pushing it all over the place. You know, the extent and frequency of involvement of different Yoruba states and kingdoms in the 19th century was varied. So, the 19th century and state formation were concerned with state formation. So from the time of its founding in about 1830, she was almost always at war in one part of Yoruba land or another. That's it. But in the case of Igbo, I'm trying to do a comparison so that we can see why one qualified as an imperial state and why one was less qualified as an imperial state. The current Oluwo, in making a case for the honorific of his imperial title, which he described, said, and without mentioning a town, you will all understand the reference of the Oluwo to a particular town. Unlike many other towns whose criteria were promoted from being baales to obas, Iwo never had a baale. So it's already distinguishing why somebody who is regarded as imperial now cannot be imperial because it was formerly a baale. But Iwo, on the other hand, came into existence as a crown king. So, in that wise, it's more qualified. And as such, any Oluwo of Iwo should be addressed as His Imperial Majesty. The Oluwo stool is a crown from inception. Unlike many other stools in Yoruba land, the Iwo stool was never upgraded from baleship. You know, it's throwing stones. But I won't tell you where the stone is landing. It is a natural paramount crown from formation. Oluwo is a viceroy of none. Oluwo has crowned over 30 obas. And so I want to be addressed as His Imperial Majesty. And let me just conclude. Yes. Yeah. So we have seen how many of these kingdoms and empires have transformed into empires, but it's not by the age of their thrones. Well, then is the empire dead? Some said yes, the empire is dead, but I say the empire is not dead. Long live the empire. So, as a way of conclusion, every stool has its stature and its limit. But it now appears that in this day and age, many of the occupants of the Yoruba thrones are neither ready nor able to discern their traditional responsibilities, place and status in the move towards the future. So why should we be concerned about the future? And that's why I'm going to conclude with this. So beyond the honorifics, there is a decline across board. Structurally, people need improvements in their livelihoods. That's where we are going. So it's not enough for you to bear His Imperial Majesty all over the place. What changes have you brought? What are we witnessing? You know, one of our kings has allowed us their presence confers on society. Let me end with the wise words of one Adeleke Adedoyin, who had this to say on the web. For years, I have been fascinated by the role traditional institutions can play in modern development. While many question their relevance today, monarchs like Oba Abolarin of Ogela offer a compelling answer. Imagine a king who wakes up daily to provide food, clothing, shelter, and quality education for more than 1,000 children, none of whom are biologically related to him. That level of service challenges conventional notions of traditional leadership. Yet today is not his imperial majesty. Thank you for your attention.
So I thank Imperial Professor. I think we don't waste time. Let's have the first discussant, Professor Akianao, who is a historian in his own right.
I'd like to thank the chairman, Chief Bayo Yelo, for his leadership on so many fronts. I thank the keynote speaker and the distinguished audience. I cannot say a word of history without a recognition of the man who taught me European history as far back as 1978. We have in this audience Professor Lufemi Mose. I recognize him. And for the benefit of what he taught me in 1978 in the class of European history, I'd like to begin this presentation very brief by making reference to the origin of the use of the honorific titles of His Royal Highness, Imperial, the other one, Royal Majesty, and Imperial Majesty. Sir, I remember you told us about the emergence of these titles as hierarchical titles in England, in Italy, and in Germany. And up to today, they are still being used to emphasize the hierarchies in titles as a result of the differential roles the royalty play in the management of the state. For those of them in England, it was because we had other princes and princesses who were not direct descendants of the kings and queens of the throne. And so they refer to them differently to establish that hierarchy. Having said that, I think we got the classification wrong in Yoruba land as a result of the confusion introduced to the society by colonial rule. One major disastrous impact of colonial rule was the destruction of the sacred or divine kinship of the Yoruba. And that's why you have so many other rulers of kingdoms and chiefdoms and communities and societies bearing the title His Royal Highness, His Royal Majesty, His Royal Imperial Majesty. historically, those without divine foundation or sacred or mythical claims can never be referred to as imperial majesty or royal majesty because of the sacredness attached to the monarchy. Today, we are no longer emphasizing the sacredness and the mysticism of the monarchy. We are emphasizing the political role of the monarchy. When did we destroy this mysticism and sacredness? And if it is no longer there, how do you want to continue in the tradition of offering honorific titles to those who do not deserve it? When the chairman was talking at the beginning of this presentation, he made a reference to Ibadan and the relationship between Ibadan and Oyo from historical records and apart from oral traditions, because history is different from oral traditions. Oral traditions are sources of history. History is always a reconstruction. And to that extent, the relationship between Ibadan and Oyo must be analyzed. It was as a result of the anachronism of the Oyo title that Ibadan emerged. And like he said, it was the third Ibadan. After the war in 1825-26, the soldiers, the army that destroyed the war in 1825 did not go back home. They were looking for adventures in other parts of Yoruba land, and they all encamped at Ibadan in Ibadan, led by Okwademaye, a warrior from Ife, because the coalition that destroyed the war did not came from all over Yoruba land, from Ijebu, from Ife, from Oyo. But when they got to Ibadan, the Oyo elements, because of what happened in Oyo in 1838, overwhelmed the other elements, and they succeeded in driving the Ife and the Ijebu and the Egba, and Ibadan became essentially Oyo. When Ibadan became essentially Oyo, Ibadan was afraid of monarchical exertions. They did not want to continue the tradition of the old empire. So they developed a new ideology of republicanism. So Ibadan emerged as a state, not as an empire. The state of Ibadan was redefining the nature and character of leadership in Yoruba land. And they were sick and tired of monarchical exertions. They wanted to do away with the monarchy. And that was why it was a republican system. And Professor Bolami Awe referred to the emergence of the Ibadan Republic. And the Republic in that matter will emphasize the role of personal attributes and valor in the contestation for power. And to that extent, Ibadan emerged as a center for the contest for power in a republican tradition. And Ibadan had a mandate when Basharun Oluyole became Basharun. Basharun Oluyole was a Basharun of the old Oyo Empire. And Adekunle was Ààrẹ Ọ̀nà Kakanfò of the old Oyo Empire. They had two major assignments. Adekunle was to defend the empire of Oyo to the left, and Basharun to the right, and Ekun Osi and Ekun Ọ̀tún. And to that extent, Ibadan had a mandate of defending the interests of Yoruba land against the Fulani attack. It first occurred in 1840 and subsequently in 1878. The January War of 1877-1878. So Ibadan ventured into other parts of Yoruba land to protect Yoruba land, not to establish an empire. Yeah. The use of Ajele was to report back to Ibadan whatever development that was going on in the vassal states. Ibadan had the establishment of that sovereign power over a vast area of Ibolo, Ijesha, Ekiti, Akoko areas, even up to the Borno area. So it was not an empire in the sense of the old order. It was an empire in the sense of a new republican order. And to that extent, Ibadan, to call Ibadan an imperial majesty will be a misnomer, because Ibadan actually started as a rebellion against monarchical exactions. The sacredness of our kingdoms and of our political arrangements must be restored. But gradually we are destroying it. And that's why I want to refer us to a statement made by Awujale Afidipote in 1885, before he was banished. The British wanted to enter Yoruba land through Ijebu. The Awujale resisted them and said, over his dead body will a foreign sovereign take control of the whole of Yoruba land through Ijebu. And he declared himself Olodumare. Then you begin to ask the question, why will you describe yourself as Olodumare? Are you equating yourself to God? But he said no. That in him was the power to control and manage the affairs of Yoruba resided. And therefore, the colonial masters, especially Willoughby, should not breach that arrangement between him and the owner of the ultimate power. And so he refused to surrender Ijebu as a gateway to Yoruba land. But Afidipote remained resolute on one point, the sacredness of that institution of Oba. Today, we no longer have sacred kingship. We no longer have the mysticisms that should surround the throne and the monarchical establishments. And that is why you have this confusion all over. At this level, and as academics, we must separate politics from tradition. We have political royal highness, royal majesties, and imperial majesties. But we have divine, sacred, and mystic royal highnesses, royal majesties, and imperial majesties. Like the guest speaker said, the keynote speaker said, the conditions have been established. Certain kings will automatically qualify to be addressed as imperial majesties because it presided over a vast area of land and they imposed their sovereignty over them. And in addition to what he said, let me add this point, that Ife actually in the time in his history established an empire by military conquest, even before the emergence of Oyo and other places. To the extent that under the reign of Alaye Mole Obalufon, Ife was trading all over Yoruba land and all over the Yoruba states, up to the borders with Kogi State. They looked up to Ife as the center of power. Ife once had power, and this power was co-extensive, and we have archaeological evidence to support this. I think Professor Akin has established that beyond disputation. That is the order. And for that reason, if we qualify with the point raised by Professor Additional, that the Oni would conveniently be described as imperial majesty. But from what we are seeing today, they are all honorific titles. They do not move us anywhere because they are not constitutionally recognized. There will be other considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I call on the second discussants, I just want to advise all of us. Many of us don't know any history about where we come from. And it's very sad. My experience goes further to the extent that even within a family, taking my family as an example, we have 5 sections. Many of my cousins, younger cousins, they just know we belong to the same family, what is the connection between us? They don't know. So if you yourself as an elder, you don't know, how do you educate them? And historians say that the people without history, they are lost.
Chairman, sir, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, by definition, an Aladojubo, because history is not my field, but I'm an agent of history. I make history happen as a human being, and historians reckon with us. But acknowledging the brilliant presentations that have already been made, and particularly taken off from Professor Akinalao's position, I'm constrained to look at the issue at hand from a linguistic point of view. Linguistic point of view in the sense that when a culture describes features of its existence, its reality, from the language of another culture, there usually is this kind of problems, challenges, because the language evolves, and language evolves based on the environment. It is the imperatives of an environment that push human beings to create words to describe concepts in the culture. And because cultures emerge within localities, and with time and human mobility, the culture of some locality will come in contact with some culture of some other localities. Then we have these challenges of reconciling terminologies and how concepts are described. And at best what happens is that there is a quest to look for conceptual intersections. We have this concept in this culture, we have this concept in another culture, and to what extent do these two concepts intersect? To the extent that we can use words that we use to describe this culture and this concept to describe words from these other cultures. And I believe that is the issue that we are dealing with here, as Professor Alao explained with his study of British history earlier on. The idea of an imperial, the concept of the imperial from Europe probably differs from the concept of our existence here and our experiences. I mean, fundamentally, an empire describes, as has been said already also, describes a ruler, a state, a people who, for one reason or the other, take over rulership, take over the decision of states, of affairs in another state, either by conquest, or by diplomacy, either by whatever means. That basically, that is what an empire is. But we find that in Yoruba land, there are many phenomena that, if we look at conceptually, will have conceptual intersections with the idea of an empire, but may not necessarily be, in that sense, an empire. You know, there's this concept in Yoruba land, contemporary, we say this idea of this widow. If you travel from the Shagamu interchange and go towards beyond Ijebu, go to Ore. Now along the road you see a lot of these way tools. So from an Ijebu point of view, there's Ijebu Igbo, there's Ijebu Ode, Ijebu Igbo, Ijebu Ife, there's Ode Ogolu, Ijebu Mushi, and on like that. Now all these are part of a composite Ijebu. Maybe Imperial, maybe not. The historians will decide. But we must first and foremost acknowledge that this phenomenon exists within Yoruba land and has nothing to do with trying to formulate a word, to rationalize the word imperial. If we go to Ekiti, we will see Ado Ekiti, Ikoro Ekiti, Erawo Ekiti, Igede Ekiti, and on like that. Go to Ijesha land, we say Ilesha itself, Ijebu Ijesha, Ikwetu Ijesha, Esa Oke, Imesi Ile, Erin Ijesha, Ere Ijesha, Ipendo. Go to Abeokuta, you find Ake, Okeono, Bagbura, Ibara, Owu. So you find that these settlements, some of them fused together by centrifugal forces, and some of them by expansion, what you can say centrifugal forces. So if we look at it carefully, we might now say, okay, maybe we can look at those that are formed by centripetal forces, in which case a ruler reaches out and takes on other existing settlements. Whereas on the other hand, you have a people and they expand so much that they are reflecting some distinction from the center they came from. So this, I believe, is a reality in Yoruba land that we must look at carefully and critically to be able to put these phenomena in this imperial phenomenon in context. Professor Alao did say that Ife actually established an empire, and even till today, if you go to Atapami in Togo, the bride of the Yoruba they speak there is referred to as Ife. You say, Ife, you are speaking Ife. When you speak Yoruba, I was there and I was saying, Ife ni so it's part of these are relics that Ife went that far. And a lot has been said also about Ibadan, which is a very, very interesting phenomenon in Yoruba history too. In fact, when Professor Alao was talking about how Ibadan kept the settlement together, it just reminded me of a story, and allow me to, little extended, but then allow me to say it. In 1960, Nigeria became independent, and the University of Ibadan noticed a contradiction because there was a Bachelor of Divinity program in the University College Ibadan, according to the tradition from the University College London. And when Nigeria became independent, it was reasoned, how can the state be training priests for the
know the extent to which Ife was expanding. Not only that, we said Oduduwa, had all these children, Onipoko, Onisabea, what have you. Is that not an empire? Why are we agreeing? Even Oyo came from Ife. Then the last one I want to say is this, okay? Oyo Empire, my own, did not collapse. You should stop saying the fall of Oyo Empire. It was not the Oyo Empire, and that's the role of Ifa. This is an empire that there was no GSM, there was no GPS, there was no communication, was able to foresaw that if the Alafin is killed, like the Fulani did to the Hausa kings, okay, that's the end of the empire. And we were able to relocate the empire, the capital, from Jepa or Oyo, about 3 or 4 Oyos, okay, up to the new Oyo Atiba today. That is not superior administration. That is strategy. And then you now have Ibadan came up from Oyo. The Alafin was involved, like the professor said. You have the Okurot or Tuokosi to defend the Yoruba land. That is master strategy, master political planning. That is you can compare to anything in the whole world. So it's a transition. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'd like to thank Professor Adeshina and Professor Akialawo for that brilliant interventions. These are people we respect within the family of history. But I think we have to go back to the first principle. Because according to Heraclitus, we must at every point in time elevate ourselves to a unity, where empiricism is based in principle. That is the wisdom, knowing how totality is governed through totality. I say this in terms of saying that there is a kind of disconnect between theory and practice. And until we are able to come back to that unity, then everything we are doing may be tantamount to exercise in futility. Because Professor Adeshina made it clear that when you say imperial majesty, it has to do with expansionism. You must hold sway beyond your immediate territorial domains. So in that case, that is the theory. Once a particular power has not been able to expand itself beyond its territorial domain, then it means that if we are using the concept of imperial majesty, it means it is ascribed, not achieved. And in that case, I'm saying that we have to adopt that sociological category to say that we have achieved status and ascribed status. So the ones that have been able to expand their territory beyond their immediate environment can be regarded as achieved imperial majesties. But the other ones who have not been able to do that, we can say that we are ascribing that title to them to make them happy. Then the second point is the question I want to raise, and I think Professor Akialawo has mentioned it in passing, to say that Nigeria became a republic in 1963, and having become a republic, these titles, Imperial Majesty, Royal Highness, are they in consonance with the republican system? Thank you.
So 1 minute, okay. That helps a little, but not much. Dinner you need tea late. I think we've had very interesting and we can have another session.
Yes, sir.
I think we should. Yes. But the organizers will make use of, I hope this is being recorded.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And it's going to the whole world, sir.
Oh, so you go through it.
Yeah, virtually everywhere.
Yes, you go through
recording.
the recording and be able to bring out the key areas we have to
Revisit. Interrogate further.
revisit. I will make comment later, but just for 30 seconds. Professor Adeshina, if only to just read the note you have made when people are talking. Please, come in.
Thank you very much. Well, one thing we enjoy doing very much in history is discourse and analysis. And what has happened this evening is a manifestation of that. And so I thank you. Well, history can cause order or disorder. What did you expect? The story you tell is different from the story I tell. Fights will start. And so, there is no way in many circumstances that we agree on the stories being told. Yeah, that's it. History is also about interpretation. You know, it's not mere storytelling. So if it depends on what you want to do with it. When Hitler came up with his own Aryan race, the master race, and Israel came up with the chosen race, it's going to be conflictual. So the way you handle history is really, really important. Well, the Queen being the only Royal Majesty and Nigeria becoming a republic, that's academic. We are what we are. The fact that the Queen was the Royal Majesty did not annul whatever we are and whatever we want to be. You know? So, you can describe yourself like Yorubas would say, even though it's very small, right? You know, but the Ife Empire, that could be a possibility when you look at it from the dispersal and the places occupied by the Ife group. Well, I may not describe that as an empire in the sense of the Oyo Empire, but we also have the empire of the mind. The empire of the mind can take you anywhere, and that's why when they tell you, oh, Oyo Empire has collapsed, it has ended, I say no. If you know how many people all over the world still pay allegiance to Oyo Empire, you will be surprised. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And I want to thank you, sir, for your question. The assignment before me is to establish the fact of Ife Empire. And it's so straightforward. There is a recent study about Yoruba land before the emergence of Yoruba. People have been living in Yoruba land before Yoruba emerged. And even in Ile-Ife, there were 13 autonomous communities in Ile-Ife before Yoruba came. But the Yoruba experiment went all over Yoruba land. To the extent there is this succession. And let me give you the rundown. In Ado-Ekiti and Ekiti area, the autochthonous people were the relation. The Oduduwa group captured them and imposed a different political arrangement over that area. In Ijebu area, we have the Oko. These are the autochthonous inhabitants of this area. When the Oduduwa group came under Awujale, they overcame them and they subsumed them under the control of Ife. That's why they swear allegiance to Ife all the time. The third one is the Aladikun. We are all familiar with Aladikun. And we are all familiar with the saying that the Oduduwa group, the Ife group, met the Aladikun in the Oyo area. And they overwhelmed them. So they were the autochthonous people in these areas. And in the Ondo area, Idori, they have the Ifore group. They were already there before they were outsmarted by the Ife group. And that is one sociological evidence. The other evidence is archaeological, and that has been well established by Akobujino. That Ife had a thriving empire based on commercial activities of traders, that they were all over Yoruba land. And during the reign of Ọọ̀ni Alayemọlẹ Ọbalufon II. Ife was all over Yoruba. And what our chief is putting on is this as an established evidence of the sovereignty of Ife and the traders all over Yoruba. The glass piece actually started in Ife and was exported to all the traders of Yoruba. And so we can confidently at this point, although research is continuing, that there was an Ife Yoruba.
Well, as an Aladojubo, I came here to learn, and I have learned. Thank you very much.
The President.
Okay. Thank you, the chairman, distinguished senior members of the club, ladies and gentlemen. Well, my assignment is to thank you for coming to our club. But before saying that, I'm excited today because we are now back into the era of healers and wailers. And now we were waiting to know the proportions of wailers that transited into healers and then to be able to balance the game. But we couldn't. There will be a rider to this. And I assured the chairman that there will be a rider. So on behalf of the entire membership of the Senior Staff Club, University of Ibadan, I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. With what you have seen, I believe that you now know that the Senior Staff Club, University of Ibadan, is not just a place where we drink. It's a place where we engage ourselves constructively. We critique everything, discuss with ourselves, and find the truth, because it is only the truth that cannot be corrupted. And that is a place where I like to action what Professor Arabu mentioned about interpretation of history and history. I think we have missed it as a country because somebody in the bracket of my age didn't do history in school. I think it was recent that they introduced history. History was returned back into the secondary school. Yeah, so I think it is very, very important that we are conscious of ourselves. I'm a boy from Ogun, Olufi, Ogun land. So if my king also decides to answer Imperial Majesty tomorrow, you can imagine, because Olufi is actually a direct son of an Alaafin, and we migrated from Ogun to where we are today. You know, sir? It's a title. Yeah, it's a title. But you see, at one point or the other, we must put a stop to this for us to have definitive and sanity in the system. And this is like Professor Ibo mentioned. This is currently ravaging the entire southwestern state of Nigeria. Every king wants to be His Imperial Majesty. But I'd like to introduce to you, sir, that every member of the Senior Staff Club are Imperial Majesty. And on behalf of all of them, I want to thank you, starting with the President. I want to thank you, while I also look forward to having you again for the second round of this discussion. You know, I want to believe you will make out time, sir, you know, to come back, and also with our panelists, keynote speaker, to come back for us to
came all the way from the UK
for this yes. Yeah, I also want to specifically thank that Prof that came from Lagos. Prof, yes, I want to specifically thank you for coming, because this is what we have been talking about. Okay, we have been trying to circulate these flyers to invite as many, you know, to join us so that we can learn from ourselves. You can look at the submission of my prof here. He said he has learned. You know, I have learned a lot of things this evening. even from the Mogaji himself, I have learned the concept of new order, okay, and how we can have some form of offshoots from history that seem not to have been properly documented. This is also leading us back into proper documentation of activities, you know, and I believe that as Nigerian, as Yoruba, we will get it right. We will get it right. Thank you and God bless. I also want to thank the media team from items, from media, UIMC, okay, Diamond FM, Premier TV, you know, because sir, we have quite a number of people online listening to us. At the last count, I saw about 30 persons online listening to us, and it is, you know, the output is very clear, and everybody was able to hear what we are discussing here. So thank you for coming this evening, and God bless.
Well, thank you very much. It's the end of another. I'll hand over to him to close. It's the end of another round of our discourse. Will you appreciate the committee that is fashioning out this? No, why will you not do that? I think they deserve a loud round of applause, really. To even think out that topic of imperial majesties, and do you think it's so easy? And to bring these people, to bring Chiboyero, you know. But for one thing, let me say it clearly. Shegun, for you, I can do everything. Thank you, sir. And you know, Professor Taradeshino, you know, we discussed this in March, precisely March, around March, and he told me, Prof, I won't be in Nigeria until July. I said, we are going to wait. And we waited. And he's here today, and I'm sharing with us. We really appreciate you. Professor Kialao, you know what? I know how to get my people. You know, he's a professor of history in Bafumi Awolowo University. But today, he's on his sabbatical at the Emmanuel Alayande University of Education, Oyo. And I am on the governing council of that university. And so immediately I was thinking, who is going to be the first discussant? My mind quickly went to him. And I know he was part of the inauguration lecture. So I said that would be a good one. Thank you very much, Prof. And Chief, Doc, I want to really appreciate you, sir. When we were discussing a second discussant and a community person, Rocco Iwela actually said, look, you will get Dr. Tunde Adedola, who will be able to diligently and believe you me, sir, even from engineering and linguistic perspective, we have benefited tremendously. On this note, I want to thank everybody, and I will hand over to the chairman to close this occasion.
Officially. Thank you very much. I think everybody, the time we spent here is worth it. It's a very nice evening. The historians, they still need to help us. They still need to help us. There's very little many of us know about the history of the Yorubas. Like I said, many people don't even know the history of their towns. They don't know the history of their families. So, for our monarchical system, I think colonialism has done a lot of damage, which our politicians who took over from them took advantage of. And I don't know how we want to be out of that. The two professors of history, they said, gave us a few facts. Our obas, before, there's what we usually say, ìrólà ń gbọ́ ojú òtá láàfin. they were not even related, they were not seeing themselves until 1937, when they now decided we should be having meetings. So the first meeting of these 6 Obas was held in Ife, and wherever it was held, that Oba would be the chairman of the meeting. So 1937 in Ife, 1938 in Oyo, 1939 in Ibadan, 1940 in Ijebu-Ode. Wọn ò ríra wọn tẹ́lẹ̀. There was honor. But now, ṣé ọba tí tó ń lọ ọba tí and because they have also gbogbo wọn ní gbogbo ní wọn wá kò ní wọn wá gbogbo that has really brought them down. In the old western region, our government started creating council of Obas. That was the beginning of it. So there wasn't this until 1957 or so. So they were now integrated into the political system, which, as of today, the Obas, even the most revered amongst them, it's not worth anything with any government. With any government. In Ibadan, yes. So in Ibadan, until Oba Ogunbunmiso, we never allowed any government to organize installation of our Ibadan. That was the first one. Community Ibadan don't coronate Oba. That was the first time any government ever did it. I know this because the 3 before that, I was a member of the coronation committee. Ibadan contributed money for the coronation of his own Oba. But now, Ajimobi took over. Now, spent so much on that. And since then, it continued. Each community was burying its own Oba. Now it is the government that will now. So if government now does that, he who pays bribe, he pays with you. So whether imperial or royal majesty or what is the value of an Oba now in Yoruba land? So that may be another area you want to look into. So, and finally, the title of Olubadan was adopted by Ibadan in 1946. It's not a recent thing. It was part of the reform which Ibadan itself did. And part of Oriki Ibadan in Iyade. As I said, Ibadan grew up, was established not by any of the 7 sons. Not by any of the 7 sons. So traditionally, it doesn't belong to any of them. But at the peak of the military power of Ibadan, tí Ìbàdàn bá fẹ́ dádé yóò di kò sẹ́ni kankan tó lè mú. Kò sẹ́ni kankan tó lè mú. Ọba mẹ́ta, Ọọ̀ni mẹ́ta ni Ìbàdàn gbá dédé lórí. So ìlú náà kíládé ọ̀nà wà wọ́n kí ló já mọ́, kí ló wúlò fún. So I think we need, and it has to start with people who know, the historians. You remember in 2015, we wanted to commission his department to write a history of Ibadan, the authentic history of Ibadan. But somewhere along the line, it didn't materialize. Because even within Ibadan, everybody came from everywhere. Everybody now claiming seniority, one family over the other. So we wanted an authentic history of Ibadan. And we are likely to still come up with that. Yeah. So, I want to thank the committee. Thank you for setting up the committee, for agreeing to have this dialogue. And we have all agreed this shouldn't be the end. Thank you very much.